So your patient has a gluten intolerance or insensitivity issue. Well, the standard advice would be avoid gluten. Makes sense. But if you're at a restaurant or if you're getting food, how do you know that it's in fact gluten-free? Well, my guest today is going to help us understand ways that we can get around that issue and in fact test for it, which is a very novel concept. This is ReachMD. I'm Dr. Matt Birnholz. I'm joined by Carla Borsoi. She's Vice President of Marketing at 6 Sensor Labs. Welcome to you, Carol.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk about this increasing problem in which what people think they're getting is not what they're getting. When people are looking to avoid certain foods, whether it be from insensitivities, intolerances, or just flat-out allergies, they might be getting more than they anticipated when they're going out. And 6 Sensor Labs has developed a technology for being able to sense that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've built a portable sensor that allows you to test your food. In this case, for gluten, we're working on peanut and dairy as well. But you take a small sample of food, you put it in a one-time use capsule, crack the lid on that, and that exposes it to an extraction solution, which is going to pull out the protein, and then we're going to bring that into an antibody and see if we can detect the level of gluten. Now, that sounds all sort of scientific, but from a consumer perspective, we've made it really easy. You put that capsule on a device, and then you're going to get a binary output of either it's got gluten in it, and we'll give you a sad face, and if it's under 20 parts per million, we'll give you a smiley face. So the way that we look at it is there's not that extra layer of data out there right now for consumers. They go out to eat, and in our own restaurant research alone, we found that about 20% of the time there is actually gluten in food that has been ordered as gluten-free, and that's a little unsettling for people. I mean, people say to us all the time, hey, I went out to eat, and I came home, and wow, I was on the couch for 5 hours not being able to move, or other things that we shouldn't necessarily have to discuss. But what we have done is made that super easy for someone to go out and test and just see, let me just have a little extra layer of data before I actually decide to eat.
Right. Well, you aptly said there are details that one shouldn't discuss, but the beauty is that we're on a medical channel, so we can discuss it at length. And so I want to get into that a little bit, because you're dealing with a population of people who they deal with a very big range of symptoms. But take us through a little bit in terms of anecdotally or just experientially some of your consumer base. When they meet that problem in which they encounter something that they're intolerant to, let's say gluten in this case, they thought they were going gluten-free. They go out and they get something either from the market or they go to the restaurant, and turns out they were wrong. It has way beyond that threshold that your test senses is actually beyond what you should want or what you should get. What kind of symptoms are they coming back with? What you said? Some people are laid up on their couch and they have no idea what happened. Is that
well, I mean, I think if they have that sensitivity has been diagnosed and they're aware of it, they'll know. But what we've heard is the most common things are vomiting, diarrhea, or constipation, the complete opposite end of the spectrum, stomach upset, fatigue, and then in some extreme cases we've heard I think the one that stands out to me was a man who emailed us and he's like, I need this for my wife. Every time she gets exposed in gluten, she's suicidal, and I have to be on suicide watch for 6 weeks. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, we have to get this in your hands as soon as possible. So, we hear these extreme symptoms. Some people are like that. Other people are like, oh, I just have a headache for 2 or 3 days. And from the data out there on patients who have this, there's about 200 different symptoms that people can have. And again, we hear the extremes, but the most common generally tend to be those ones involving the stomach or digestive tract in some form.
Right. And your company arrived at a 20 parts per million threshold. How did you arrive at that threshold?
Yeah, so for gluten, there is a federal standard for what constitutes quote-unquote gluten-free, and that is 20 parts per million. And that is based off of some clinical research that some dispute. And from the patient side, they often dispute what that looks like. But the reality is we just finished some research. About 70% of people that we've talked to have no idea what level they actually react to. But they know from testing, eating packaged goods that are certified gluten-free that have to meet that standard that they're most likely more sensitive.
Right. And why gluten? Why did 6 Sensor Labs move in on gluten particularly?
Yeah, so one, there is a standard that we were able to adhere to and at least do that. There is not a standard like that for peanut or for milk, and those are the next two things we're looking at. And part of the reason that we're sort of going through still the process is what should that level of detection be? And, arguably, like even in countries like in the EU, where there's a little bit more knowledge around these different things, they're not as there's not even a standard there. So, for example, in Australia and New Zealand, for gluten, the level has to be below 10 parts per million or below 5. So it's really super precise. We don't have those for other things. So that was the first one. The second is that the gluten-free market is growing. And then most obviously, our two co-founders both have to avoid gluten. One has an extreme gluten sensitivity and the other has ulcerative colitis. So that was the one thing that they both have to avoid. So that was just a natural place for all of those reasons.
I see. And you mentioned peanut. I mean, is part of the reason why there isn't a known threshold yet, or it's not really discussed, is because for many people, when you mention peanut allergy, the threshold is it's either there or it's not, and if it's there, you're in deep, deep trouble.
That's exactly it. And I think, we were looking for clinical data. We've been in touch with different parts of, for example, the NIH to see what data they've got. We've reached out to say, hey, what level should there be advocacy around in terms of the legislation? And I think everybody kind of defaults to 0 is what we want.
Right.
So that's part of where some of those issues are coming from.
So do you envision being able to move into those areas? Because obviously, we hear gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity. It's increasingly important. It's an increasingly large market both for you and patients. On our end, we see increasing number of patients being diagnosed with gluten sensitivity. But the problems are mainly, for the most part, except for these outliers, they're mainly digestive issues. Moving in on something like peanut allergy, for instance, where the need is your patient or the patients that are coming in with this issue, not only are they aware, for the most part, but they're paranoid of it. And,
exactly.
it affects every decision they make in terms of their eating and where they go and what they do and all the questions they ask. But they don't really have a test. All they have is their EpiPen.
Right.
Do you see an opportunity there to be able to use this technology, which we'll talk about, in those emerging areas or those areas where people are in dire need of some sort of diagnostic test immediately?
Yeah, for us, the idea is again, it's this extra layer of data that doesn't exist now. So the one thing with peanut is there's multiple proteins within peanut itself that people may be reacting to. And so as we're working through our chemistry, we have to make a determination of which of those proteins we're actually going to surface. So one of the big things, and we spoke about this a little earlier, is this idea of we want to be as transparent as possible. So we would let people know up front, here's what proteins we're testing for within peanut. Here's, if you have other proteins that we're not testing for, you need to know that. But the way that we look at it and the way that we even look at it with gluten is test, and if it comes up as having any, you probably want to avoid it. And if it comes up with that smile, maybe you still proceed with some level of caution, but at least they have more data than they have now. And that's sort of our attitude about it. It's just an extra layer of data. And until we can get our chemistry and our science even stronger and better, which it will obviously happen over the years, that's what we want to be able to provide to people.
That's great clarification. Well, if you're just tuning in, this is ReachMD. I'm Dr. Matt Birnholz, and I'm joined by Carla Borsoi. She is Vice President of Marketing over at Six Sensor Labs, based in New York, I believe.
No, San Francisco, actually.
Oh, great, even better. Based in San Francisco, where we are not currently, but I'm quite jealous that you get the chance to call that home. So let's move in on the test itself. Our listeners will guide them through what you have, but for our viewers, it'll be kind of interesting to talk about the test and get a sense of how it does what it does.
Right. So again, it's an antibody-based detection. We are actually looking for the proteins in whatever food sample it is. So we have a one-time use capsule, and I just have to clarify that it is not something that can be cleaned out. We actually did some usability testing where we had people clean things out, and we're like, can we get it clean enough so if there was any cross-contamination that we can avoid it in the future? Not possible. And the reality is if most people are using it in a restaurant at our friend's house, they're not going to have lab-based equipment to clean something to the level it would need to be cleaned. So it's a one-time use capsule. It's fairly small, about the length of a finger, and there's a little end to it that has a series of teeth. I'll give you a little peek at that.
Oh, nice.
And what that actually does is that's one of the things that will help grind the food. So if anyone out there is familiar with different lab-based tests for food, you know that you have to emulsify a sample. You kind of have to make it really homogeneous, and then you want to be able to take a precise amount.
Right.
So a lot of our technology is not just in the chemistry itself, but in the sample prep and the ability to grind the food and get it ready to go into the chemistry, and then working on both liquids and solids, as well as being able to serve for a wide range of, in terms of people maybe put a drop in, or maybe they put a ton of food in. So we needed to be able to work through all of those scenarios.
Right. So as I look into this and I see within the capsule a number of prongs, those are meant to help grind? Is that
exactly,
the goal here?
Exactly. And if you look at the lid also has some grinding mechanisms on it as well. So as you twist it, it actually is going to grind the food down. So in the case of a liquid, it's not as important, but definitely when we've tested like crackers or things like that, it goes all the way down.
Interesting. And how long does that take? After grinding, emulsifying the food and running it through the test, what is the typical time?
So the test will take about 2 minutes, and really what happens if there's a lot of gluten in this case, or a lot of whatever the substance is, the test will be faster. But if we're really looking for the minute quality, it'll take about 2 minutes, and then after that, it'll give you that output. So all you would do is you're going to twist that lid on, you're going to put it in the sensor itself. So there's an optical sensor inside of this permanent piece that someone would buy and keep, and that actually can detect the results of the test. So. Yeah, and then the sensor will then, again, provide that binary output. It's going to give you a sad face if we detect that substance at the level of detection that we've described, or it'll give you a smiley face if not. So we made it really simple, and what's been great is to bring that out in front of consumers. It is immediately understandable, and people are like, man, if I saw that smiley face, I'd still kind of know that I need to wait a second and say, okay, do I still feel suspicious? But if they see that frown face, it's like, let me call the waiter back over, let me ask the server if they can make me something else, or if this often happens, people often say, oh, I want to do this at my in-laws' house, or, at the church potluck or something. Maybe I just won't eat that one particular thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit more politics played there.
Yeah, exactly.
So with each one-time capsule use, are people, your consumer base, are they getting packages of a massive number of capsules?
Yeah, so, it's interesting because, you would think people are going to use, 700 of these or something. But the reality is we're going to sell them in refill packs of 12. And when most people are like once or twice a week, that they would want to test, it's only those times when people are like, man, I go to this restaurant all the time, but there's a new chef here, or there's new staff that I've never met before, or they're, again, in a place where they don't, they've just never been there, or they place like a wedding or some place where they have no choice over what's being served to them.
And is cost an issue as far as being able to utilize this, or is there any way in which they can defray some of the costs? Obviously, it's not at the point yet of being able to have this physician prescribed.
Correct.
But do you see that sort of on the horizon?
Yeah, so right now we're selling direct to consumers through our website, and people are telling us, we haven't gone through and verified this, that they're getting reimbursed through their FSAs. But what we're hearing from doctors is that many of them want to distribute it, particularly, and then in the case of dietitians, a lot of dietitians want to have it with patients who are newly diagnosed so that they can help them sort of navigate the waters, but also for a little bit of a chance to understand compliance. So the other key aspect of this that we haven't talked about is it ties into an app, so people can report on where they were and share the data. And so dietitians in particular are like, oh, there's sort of a backdoor to understand where people are actually dining out, so you can kind of do a double check and say, gosh, you've been eating a lot of, junk food lately, or going out and eating you're going to all dessert places and testing, maybe we should talk about that. So there's also that feedback loop too.
I see. And is this, for clarification, is this a particular app, or is this the general type of app that people use to track their calorie intake?
No, this will be an app that ties to the device. So you would actually be able to take every test that you have and tie it to a particular location. So for example, if you're at a restaurant and you did a test, you can say, I checked the chicken milanese and it was fine or it was bad, and then other people would be able to see that too. So over time we can build a repository of data that people can review before they go out.
Interesting.
So again, it's all about adding that data for people to be able to review and to be able to understand what they think might be good.
That sounds like a Yelp for the molecular age.
Yes, I think that's a wonderful way to think about it. Science-based proof.
Science-based proof. Well, Carol, anything else you want to add? We covered a lot of ground, obviously. It's a really interesting test, I have to say. And it seems to be will fill a need for a number of people, especially as you expand into some of the other allergy areas that we talked about. Anything that you want to close with before we go?
I just, the thing for me that's so powerful is we talk to people every day, and we talk to people who really feel like they need this, and it just gives a voice to people. And in particular, what I love is when kids come to us and they say, you know what, I want to have this because other people, they don't have a voice for themselves. So I think about this is just a little piece of science in everyone's pocket that they can, go out there and feel a little bit better and a little bit more at ease.
Yeah, it's like that child's chemistry lab you get to put in your pocket.
Exactly.
Well, with that, I very much want to thank Carla Borsoi from Six Sensor Labs. We've been talking about new testing technologies for people with gluten intolerance, with horizons and potential for other intolerances down the road. Again, Carol, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
For access to this and other interviews on ReachMD, make sure to come over to reachmd.com. We'll be there for you, and we're looking forward to seeing you. Thanks again.